I met an Apple employee at the Tesla event, by the way, who's in the spatial computing group. And he told me, we saw the Tesla 6 months ago and we said, there's no way we can compete with this. I talked to somebody who saw them building a 4-seater. They didn't show the 4-seater. They showed the 2-seater, which doesn't compete with any of its current products.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to TeslaFix. Today we're talking again about the Robotaxi event because I think Wall Street missed a point of some sort, or didn't they? Was it totally legitimate what they are saying so far that, where is the AI and the stuff from the Robotaxi event? So today we have a very interesting guest here. That's the first one here on TeslaFix. Some tech evangelist, but let's see who it is after the intro.
Welcome to TeslaFix. Make sure to subscribe and like this episode.
Robert Scoble is joining me today. Way!
Yay!
Yeah, it's so nice that you could come onto the channel. I mean, you're very time constrained, of course, because in the tech space, things are happening daily.
I'm
by
daily,
the
minute by minute. I have X.com over on this screen, and I'm watching things happen. New models getting announced. All sorts of weird stuff is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So in case nobody knows you, I'm going to give a brief summary. So Robert actually is a tech journalist. He gets into the nitty gritty and really looks into the new releases. You were the first one who actually had an iPhone, kind of. Is that correct so far?
I was the first one to buy one at Steve Jobs' store in Palo Alto, California. Yep.
Yep, exactly. So very early on in the game of technology, and you've followed Apple pretty closely many years now.
Well, I was Apple's first child laborer back in 1978, right? So I learned how to solder on Apple II motherboards in my mom's kitchen. That's a whole story. But
yeah, so he has this tech background. So I'm very super excited to go through the Robotaxi event of Tesla with you, because obviously something is a little bit off after the event, because I've watched it online from Germany here in this third world country. Over here, we don't have FSD and stuff like this.
Hey, you have a modern Tesla factory in Germany. Don't be underselling yourself.
Well, that's right. I mean, for production, yes, but we're a little bit strange with the regulations, let's say this. Yeah. First of all, maybe you can introduce how the overview was for you to, you got invited to the event. Maybe you can run us through.
No problem. Yeah, this was really an experiential master plan, right? Elon often does these master plans where he tells the world what he's going to do for a decade. And this was that, but in an amusement park. It was in the back lot of Warner Brothers studios, and they dressed it up so that it looked like a real city. But there was all these weird cars driving around without humans in them. And there was the Optimus humanoid robots walking around the streets and meeting people and serving drinks and all sorts of fun stuff. And then there was this Robovan there. I mean, and of course, it was a big show. It was almost like an EDM concert rather than a press announcement. Right. So, that's sort of the context. It was really, the markets didn't quite get it because this was not a lot of details. So you couldn't order anything. You couldn't get details like when is it going to come. This was about showing what the future will look like in about 10 years after all these things happen, right? The Robovan comes out, the Robotaxi network and cars come out, and then the Optimus comes out, right? So it was almost like a vision of the future, rather than trying to be specific and say, you can buy this, and do a sales pitch kind of thing.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And because for everybody who didn't hear kind of the news, some people were very disappointed about this event. But I think this one is pretty interesting because the Wall Street Journal had this headline, and I think this I had to laugh when I read this. So Waymo, Uber, Lyft are biggest winners from Tesla Robotaxi flop. So that's what they called it. But okay, it's just a headline. We know that they need to jam it up a bit and be there. But it's interesting to see this because we have so much mixed reactions to the event, kind of.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see when disruption happens, there are some people that are very on the forefront. The enthusiasts are really on the bandwagon already, like they are in there. But of course, analysts, they look into the maybe even short and medium term. They want to see how the financials are, how does the revenue model behind this robotaxi could look like, how could you earn money with that? Something like that would be interesting. Like I said, the data was missing, and I agree with that. Your coverage was awesome. I really loved it. So run us through what you've experienced when you saw the robotaxi for the first time.
There's a car rolling by. That's the Robotaxi, the new vehicle that they were showing off. They had about 20 of them driving the streets like this. And there's no steering wheel in that vehicle. So when people got a ride, they didn't have the ability to take over or touch the steering wheel or the pedals. There's no pedals. There's no steering wheel in this car. And so this is an example. It's a real broad vision of what the future is going to be. Are people ready to get in a vehicle like that? No. Is the vehicle itself, the vehicle is actually pretty good. And I think they could start making them real quick if they knew that the software was finished. But the software, me and you drive FSD all the time. It's not ready for humanless driving yet. It still makes mistakes here and there. It needs a lot more what we call in the AI industry marching of the nines. In other words, getting rid of the errors so that it's way better than a human when it gets on the street. And we haven't seen an app to order it on our phones, right? They didn't show that off. They didn't show off how you're going to interact with the vehicle when it finally gets to you. Like I'm expecting Grok to be on the app and in the car so that you can talk to the car and say, hey, take me to in and out, and then it'll take you to in and out. But we didn't see that. So there's a lot of pieces that still need to be built or exposed or finished so that they can be shown to people and say, okay, it's ready now. And heck, we haven't seen regulator approval, right? They've announced it. Well, we're probably going to start it in San Francisco and Texas, probably in Austin, near where Tesla's headquarters is. And those two places already have autonomous cars. I've seen GM Cruises in Austin driving around without humans in them. I've seen Waymos and Cruises and Zooxes in San Francisco driving around without people driving the cars. So those two cities have already been through the regulatory approval process. And I think that's why Tesla is going to pick those two first too. This car is a two-seater car. It's different than a Model 3 or a Model Y or a Model X Tesla. It has also a staggered wheels, which I talked to some of the engineers. That's something you see on a high-end performance model, right? Because if you're really trying to push the car hard, that's a better way to get good performance and good handling in a turn or whatnot. And the engineers I talked to said they made that choice to make it more comfortable in the car as it drives you around, because it'll be more confident and it'll be smoother and quieter. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, there's not a glass roof on this car. There's a metal roof, right? Which people be like, why did they get rid of the glass roof? I actually asked that. And they went with a metal roof because it's sound deadening much better than glass is. And also it's cheaper and it's less, it's harder to destroy, right? So if somebody gets up on top of the car and jumps around.
We saw in San Francisco. So when I was driving with the Waymo, somebody ran onto the vehicle, wanted to get in, but the car drove past the guy, but he was approaching the vehicle. So there were a lot of crazies that just tried to haggle with those things, kind of.
Yeah. So this is really going after an Uber kind of thing. But in an Uber, there's a driver, and usually you don't have the front seat open to you. You usually pop into the back seat, which is the least comfortable of the four seats in the car, right? Here, each seat is a driver's seat. The seats are also a little wider and more like a couch on the bottom. So it's easier to get into and out of for old people like me who might have bad knees or whatnot. And it's more comfortable because you're not it's not about taking a turn real fast, right? It's about having fun on a date night or going to the airport or getting a ride to the store or whatever.
Cruising, and more like cruising, not racing. Like it doesn't need the seat doesn't need to hug you to keep you in the seat. A little bit uncomfortable, but you're tight in the seat when you drive crazy.
It also didn't have a frunk. It has a big trunk, so they lowered the hood. I bet when we get to tear one of these apart, like Sandy Munro or somebody gets to tear one of these apart, that you'll see it's largely a Model 3 underneath. I think it's built on something like a Model 3 platform. It just feels like that. But they didn't put a frunk in the front because that's hard to get items in and out of in a robotaxi kind of transportation as a service system. But you have a big back trunk to put some golf clubs in, or put your groceries in, or put your luggage if you're going to the airport or something like that in there. So they just made a lot of choices to make it more comfortable, quieter, which is going to really matter, because if the car is driving itself, you're probably going to watch a movie or listen to a music or be on a call with your friends, or or something like that, a conference call with your boss or whatever, and you want it to be very quiet inside so that you can focus on the entertainment or the business that you're doing inside the car while it's driving you across town or something like that. The AI that was running this vehicle, it was rumored to be FSD 13. They'd spent a few months at the Warner Brothers park making sure that there was no errors while it drove anybody around. In fact, out of 20 rides, I think they gave thousands of rides that night, because they had Model Ys and Model 3s driving around as well, without steering wheel as well. And those, they didn't have a wreck. We didn't hear about anybody getting in a crash or getting run over. That would have been a PR disaster if that had happened at this event.
Absolutely.
Right? So they spent a lot of time to make sure that they could present a vision of the future and do it in a way that wouldn't have any problems. And I think they succeeded from that point. Now the markets are like, well, you didn't tell us really when this is coming. I mean, Elon Musk says it's coming in 2026, which means we probably won't see a whole lot of them on the market until well into 2027. And that's if they stay on schedule, right? This kind of project can easily slip a year or two. Elon has slipped many times things a year or two or four, right? FSD is just getting good in my car. I bought it in 2018 and he was promising it in 2018. Well, it took a while to get here because it's a harder problem than even he expected it to be, right?
Yeah, it's so funny because Kim Java, she was also there. She does those also Tesla coverages and Tesla tests, and she reviews the car, different cars. So she talked to Franz Holzhausen and also one lead engineer of Tesla, and then she talked about the timeline, and then he was like, what did he say, 2 years? And he was surprised that he announced it like this, so Elon already pushing the timelines more. So this might mean that when an engineer is also surprised about the timeline, Ming
Kuo is an analyst in Asia, and he watches supply chains very closely. He's the number one most accurate predictor of what Apple's going to do, for instance, because
that's so true.
Right. Exactly, and he says the supply chain is set up to do production in 2027. So that sort of fits with Elon saying 2026. He might have a few hundred on the street in San Francisco, and then it'll start rolling up more and more in 2027. And that's if it stays on schedule, which we all know it could slip easily a year. So now we're talking 2027, 2028, maybe even a little later than that. So where do we go with this? He did announce a little bit that it should be a lot cheaper than an Uber, but he didn't give specifics. Yeah. And that's true. I mean, my Tesla is sitting in my driveway right now. When a Model Y that costs $920 a month to finance, that comes out to about $2 an hour, right? A dollar or $2 an hour. Certainly it does when you add in, a broken windshield or tires or air filters or maintenance of various kinds on the vehicle, new windshield wipers every once in a while, stuff like that. Washer fluid, right?
Expensive washer fluid.
You put all the costs together. Yeah. Let's say it's $1,500, $2,000 a month. It comes to $2, $3, $4 an hour. If you add a human to the mix, that's another $20, right? So that greatly increases the retail price. In fact, if I took an Uber to the airport from my house in South San Jose, takes almost an hour to get there. It's usually about a $70, $80 ride, right, to get to the airport. And this should be cheaper. Now, will it be cheaper from the beginning? Waymo is actually a little bit more expensive than Uber because it is a better experience to be in a driverless car than a car that has a human, because you can sit up front, you can have a more comfortable seat. And also there's no driver who's maybe drunk, maybe smokes, maybe talks too much. Some drivers have raped their passengers, right? And there's been that kind of unsafety problem. And for women, and especially, that's a big deal, right? They don't like getting in Ubers late at night because there's a risk there that they won't get home, right? So it's light on details, but it's about sort of whetting the appetite and sort of saying, hey, we're coming, and we're coming with a credible effort. And this is a credible effort. It's when you see 20 of these rolling around the street, this is not a prototype car that you see in the North Hall. It's at the Consumer Electronics Show or at the Detroit Auto Show or a German auto show, something like that. This was, actually working. You could sit in it, you could experience it, and it was a very credible effort there.
Yeah, I also agree with that because I've discussed that with Brian Futuraza as well. We've looked a little bit more negative on this thing, spun it this way. Interestingly enough, it's clear. I mean, of course, concepts have been shown, especially the Robovan, which really looks like a concept car. And people were like, yeah, this is real. And like, okay, yeah, hold your horses here. Maybe it will look different. This one will most certainly have some adjustments, but the difference with the Robotaxi, in my opinion, because you cannot deny 20 of those things. I mean, you could say, 3 prototypes could be rolling around, 4 maybe, but 20 is a little bit steep for just the prototype. So I think they are in a further stage, and I also believe that if somebody can pull this off, doesn't matter if it's just a vision that they've kind of shown, even if the car would be on a fixed route, or even if the car would have been teleoperated or something like that, Tesla still is the only company that could pull it off, because I'm not seeing Mercedes Drive Pilot doing stuff like this, because this is the only competitor from Europe, for example, now. Yet you could see, and it's different. I mean, on car shows, we saw already autonomous concept, like in every show since maybe 15 years or something, we saw autonomy, but not in that scale and with that credibility on top, because I've tested FSD in the US, I think 12.4.1 was the last version I've tested there. And it was without the steering wheel. And, I just typed in the directions, the location, and it drove me there. I didn't have one disengagement. And I even learned from the car how to drive in the US, because you can actually turn right when you have a red light. This is new to me. And we were like, whoa, no, he's doing strange stuff here. And then we were like, okay, I see it. Here's the, it's probably a rule here in the US. And then we've learned it, which is also a use case that's pretty interesting.
By the way, in New York, you're not allowed to make a right on a red turn. So it has to be geographically oriented, for the rules of the city, right? So each city has its own little rules.
Yeah, that's just my opinion on that. I think it's a little bit different here, because I mean, you've had a nice video on X. I'm going to link it, of course, here as well, where you rode in FSD. You talked about the Robotaxi event, and I think this was perfect, because you need to showcase it like this. You didn't touch the steering wheel. 10 minutes of your talk there, have a summary of the event and talking about the technology. I think that was perfect because that's the difference. And you also have pretty good ads in the US. And then, I mean, of course, actual
which
smart
is
summon.
the smart summon, which will, if you're in a parking lot and you come out of a grocery store with 2 bags, you can order your Tesla to come and pick you up in the parking lot, right? That's what smart summon does.
That's just mind-blowing. And also I wanted to share this with 1 second. We have another feature because we didn't saw a charging port. So here's the wireless charging capabilities. So how do you see that? I mean, this is also a technological advancement that's very important for this. Right?
Qualcomm actually almost a decade ago showed me wireless charging like this, which was a pad on the garage floor. You just drive on top of the pad and it starts charging. It's just there's a little bit of a loss. In other words, there's a little bit of an inefficiency, and we didn't need that. But now that there's a robotaxi coming where the car will drive without a human in it, how do you charge? How does your car go to a supercharger and plug in itself? Well, are you going to put an Optimus in every car? That would take one of those nice seats away from the passenger, right? And, are you going to stand an Optimus at every supercharger? That makes no sense. So I would expect them to have a bunch of these kinds of superchargers that you just drive on top of with a car that has this plate at the bottom, an antenna to pick up the power, and sit there for 20 minutes and charge and then go back into the fleet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's so interesting to see stuff like this. Do you think that because we have SpaceX Starlink, obviously, do you think that this will be also implemented into the Robotaxi? I mean, maybe, but I think it makes sense.
There was some new antennas that people saw on the front of the car that we weren't quite sure what they were for. There was a bunch of Starlinks on the buildings around the park. And because of Optimus was human controlled mostly. And so they needed to have really low latency wireless infrastructure set up so that the humanoid robot could be controlled by a human. And I'm sure that there was a way for the human to take control of a car in case it got stuck or in case, something was going wrong, that they could, take control and back it up or move it to a different location. But the cars were AI driven. It was FSD, and it felt like FSD. It felt like a new version of FSD there.
Yeah. And how was it to see the car without a steering wheel, without pedals? Like it's different when, I mean, theoretically I can think about that, but sitting in one with a bigger screen and how was that experience?
It's a little disconcerting at first because I'm almost 60 years old. I've been driving all my life, and I'm used to just, even when FSD is running now, I don't have to touch the steering wheel anymore, right? Because that's the new version that came out a couple of weeks ago. And I don't need to touch the steering wheel, but a lot of times I'm grabbing the steering wheel just to feel it working, and feeling it turning, and it makes me feel more comfortable. So that comfort is going to go away when you don't have a steering wheel in front of you. You have to be completely okay with the car driving and trust it. This brings up a good point. The auto industry had me go around America and ask people, are you willing to get in a car without a steering wheel? And almost everybody says F no. They really, it's hard. One guy in Kansas told me, I'm a narcissistic control freak and there's no effing way a computer's driving me around. Now I'd ask a second question. Well, what if a car came to you with a steering wheel? In other words, it drives humanless to your house or wherever you are. And then you have a choice. You can drive it or you can let the car drive. Everybody changes their answer to yes. So that's why the Model 3 and Y are still part of the Robotaxi network, because if you're one of those people and you're not ready for a completely steering wheel less experience, you can order a Model 3 to your house, and then you'll have the choice of driving it or letting it drive, and then you'll feel comfortable that you could take over if anything happens. And many people will be that for a while. Google actually knows that if you get 3 rides in a robotaxi, whether it's a Waymo, Google started the Waymo company, right? Or any of these new autonomous cars that you probably won't drive anymore. Which is really crazy. How did they get that data? And they had that data a decade ago. That's what's really crazy. The guy who ran Google R&D told me, he was like, I had dinner with him, and he's like, why do you think we bought all these little bubble cars about a decade ago? In fact, there's one in the Computer History Museum lobby in Mountain View, California, because they don't drive the little bubble cars anymore. They have the full Waymos now with a big LiDAR on top and LiDARs on each corner and something like 19 cameras and microphones and a speaker, right? A full-on autonomous car. He said, when we give employees that kind of thing, a Lexus with the LiDARs on it, we had the employees sign a contract that they would be fired if they took their eye off the road and their hands off the steering wheel. And there's a sensor, like in our Teslas, there's a camera watching us, right, to make sure we're paying attention to the road. Well, we're about a decade behind Waymo in that. Now we're going to catch up faster than they are because we have a bigger fleet size and more data and more NVIDIA cards. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on that's speeding up the learning. But Google had that 10 years ago, and everybody broke the contract within 3 rides. Everybody, including the executives, the low level
was fired. No, they were.
Yeah, because you realize the thing is it's like getting in an FSD car now. It drives so well.
I was very comfortable very fast. I got to tell you, it was it's shocking because I'm a very early adopter. I trust technology way too much, I would say. So for me, even when I came back, just the regular standard European software stack of lane keeping, I was like, oh yeah, I can drive myself. Ooh. And I was sitting there, and I had this wishful thinking that in a couple of months I will receive the FSD. But now, obviously not. But regulation is steep here. But it's funny that you mentioned that. Also, like what I was wondering before was that the Google Earth team kind of, when they scanned everything, was this a preparation for the car? Maybe I was like thinking about that because they also had LiDAR. They were driving around almost like, here's the Google Earth. Look that's the product we are looking at. But in reality, they're like really like exploring this.
The same guy told me that the autonomous car project at Google actually was used by the mapping team to map out all the street signs. Right. And on your iPhone or on your Android phone, if you're using Google Maps, it tells you what lane to get in to take an off ramp or something like that. That came out of the autonomous car team, understanding the real world, understanding which lane you should be in, how to make a path planner in AI to take you into the right off ramp, right? That kind of thing. Yeah,
that explains a lot actually, because I was also thinking like Google's navigation is still so advanced in comparison to maybe even the Apple Maps in some direction. I mean, it's getting better and now it's comparable, but it's still interesting. They were like the best map navigation out there for a long time, but I think that's also because also in the Tesla in Europe actually is like sometimes a little bit janky. The tours, the routes it calculates sometimes is like that wasn't a good idea. I wish I just had Google as a backup kind of to look into it. But
it's getting pretty good here, but it still makes path planning mistakes. It'll go past your off ramp once in a while, that kind of thing. Particularly if it's blocked from getting in, or it didn't make a good choice of getting over early enough. It still has some mistakes that it needs to be cleaned up on, and they're doing that. Every update is just right now is getting dramatically better. It's it does fewer of those things. I mean, I had several turns that just 2 months ago still would have real problems going through the turn because there was so much complexity. Now there's no problems. All right, so on those turns, so you can see it's getting the teams and the AI is learning to get rid of mistakes and make the ride more comfortable. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what I've also noticed, comparing FSD in the US to FSD in Europe, or let's say the tagging of the surroundings, let's just say that, I was zooming out while I was driving, like zooming out of the visualization. And I was like, Jesus Christ, it sees everything.
Yeah.
And this is a huge difference to the European version, because in the European version, it's another software stack, an older one, I assume.
Yes.
So it's not on par with that, because and people are already impressed. Oh, it sees everything. I'm like, you haven't seen anything. I was in the San Francisco street, and like people crossing with a bus with everything, and it could even see stuff that I couldn't see. And then I was watching closely, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, yeah, there is the person behind the bus right now, and it tracked it or just it calculated, which is so interesting. The path planning of every individual thing that's moving, that it predicts where it could go. And this is such an interesting
and it just improved last week for me, dramatically so. So now if you haven't been in Tesla in the United States in the past week, you're going to be shocked. It's smoother now, and it shows even more detail further away from the car. So it's like, wow, they're really doing a good job of adding much more detail for people.
Yeah, but Robert, you have to remember, I live here, so that's the summary of the EU. So right now, it's like the Statue of Liberty you're catching with Robozilla here, kind of, and we have the bottle cap that is not removable from the thing. So.
But you shouldn't understand. I mean, I had the first ride in the Mercedes-Benz autonomous cars. You guys have some technology, and
sure.
You know, and
but in a very niche use case, and it's not the same. Like the approach the Americans do is way better for innovation, I think. Yeah,
I talked to the Mercedes-Benz engineers about a decade ago about Tesla, and I was like asking them questions like, when are you going to put a touchscreen screen in the car? And they said, oh, we suggested that to our executives, but they said we don't want fingerprints on the glass because we're German. We want clean glass in our Mercedes-Benz, right? Things like electric vents. A lot of people don't like the design of the dashboard in the Tesla because it's so plain. They want knobs. In fact, I did some of that research too, going around America, talking to people about screens and knobs. And one farmer in Colorado told me, I'm a farmer. I have a flip phone. I don't like computers. I don't like touching computers. I don't like using computers. I want to hit a button for my AM radio, and I want to have buttons for my vents. Well, here's where it's coming down to a competitive advantage for Tesla. The electric vents give you a better experience in a robotaxi, because if you get into the Tesla, it remembers your seats, your vents, your sound system, your mirror setting, right? And probably a few other things. In fact, last night, it automatically had my friend's house because it knew my friend was in the car, and it knew we were probably going to his house, right? So there was a lot of that kind of personalization in there. Yeah. Well, Mercedes doesn't have electric vents in it. Do they have any vehicles with electric vents where you can slide on a screen and adjust the vents and adjust the airflow and the direction of the airflow or anything like that? Right?
Not right now.
Even BMW a decade after I asked their engineers.
Still, it's right? Not even like, yeah.
So Tesla has 7 million cars with cameras, AI computer, vents, right? And all that, all integrated together. That's why the Robotaxi is going to be a credible effort when it finally comes out. And I don't expect to be in one until 2027, and it might be 2028 or even 2029 if it really slips or the regulators go up in arms or something goes wrong. But Elon's been planning this for a long time.
Yeah. Some people even still think that the back screen in the Model S or in the Model 3 Highland upgrade or the refresh, think that the screen is for entertainment and not for putting in an address where to go in a robotaxi. Right. So that's the plan, that you can sit in. That's why there is a back screen. I mean, obviously, it's also about watching something or maybe for the kids to look at something.
Adjusting the seats so you have more leg room, right? You know, because you can adjust the seats on that little screen, right? The front seat, so you can move the seat up if there's not enough leg room or whatever.
Yeah, but so this is so interesting because we can see that unfold kind of, and what got me so exciting about the event, I still was missing a lot of stuff. For example, I expected to be like the van would be a car that just could have a steering wheel or could not have a steering wheel, like a universal thing that you could put out, because this would be medium term a better solution right now because we don't get the Cybertruck love
keep
here
in
in
mind,
Europe. So
the Chinese
we want the
were
van,
making fun
obviously.
of it because they already have buses like that in China,
Yeah, I know.
driving around without a steering wheel, and they're like, "You guys are late." And I was like, "Yeah, well, Elon's the only one able to bring us this kind of innovation, and so we got to cheer Elon for doing it. Great that you have it in Shanghai, but this shows." The future is here, but it's not evenly distributed, right? It's hard to move the entire world to a new paradigm of transportation for a whole lot of reasons. I mean, the average car, lasts 12 years, right? Or more. So even if every car tonight, every new car was autonomous, it's going to still take 12 years before the average car is autonomous. And I have a friend who has a 1929 Franklin that he drives around, right? and those still work great on the roads. Might not go 90 miles an hour or 150 on the Autobahn or whatever you're doing. but you can still tow around town in one of those, and it still is going to interact with an autonomous car, right? So it's hard to move everybody. And we're so trained in our heads that cars are freedom and are fun to drive. I mean, BMW says they're the ultimate driving machine. Well, the Robovan is not a driving machine, right?
No.
It's a riding machine. Right? It's the ultimate riding machine, right? So all of a sudden, even Germany, even if they had autonomous that was going to turn on tonight, they have to reorient their whole marketing, and their customer base has to be taught and gotten on board. And I think that was the real purpose of this event, was to educate people and was to signal to people, hey, there's autonomous cars coming. They might not be here for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 even, but they're coming, and you got to get ready for them. You got to get that into your mentality, that, hey, I'm open. If I go to Las Vegas on vacation and I get out of the airport, maybe someday I'm going to choose an autonomous car, right? And get in a Robotaxi or a Robovan and get a ride to the airport, to the hotel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting to see that they made this vision because they needed to showcase every 3 aspects of this so far, and I think it makes absolutely sense that they did. Did I miss something? Yes, of course. I missed a lot of things that I wanted to see, obviously, because I'm overhyped, but it makes sense to do a kind of a vision event. So how to call it, because they never did something like this in that scale.
I've never been to a press conference, a press event or an influencer event, a product launch event like this. The scale of it, they had a drone show, they had food and drinks all through the back lot, which was a fairly sizable place. I mean, you could take a Robotaxi around, this track around like little villages, right? And I've never been to an event like that. And I've been to like Mercedes and Toyota launch events and Apple and Samsung. I mean, Huawei, all sorts of different launch events all around the world. I've never been to one like this.
Yeah, and coming together with TeslaBot, because we've seen videos of the Teleoperation before where they were trained, like in those putting stuff into cupboards and doing arrangements, and also like folding shirts, and we saw that. And now we saw obvious teleoperated robots. Maybe you can explain which parts were autonomous, which parts were like a demo mode, and which parts were
I'm pretty sure most of it was a teleoperated robot. So there was a human in a VR headset in some building somewhere else who was embodied inside the robot with sensors on their fingers and hands, and could control them. Like here the robot's handing somebody a drink. That was a human somewhere else who was controlling the robot. But the fact that they did this with 20 separate robots, and quite a few of them were walking around the streets and letting people come up to them and talk to them, and interact with them a little bit, was pretty impressive teleoperation. This didn't look janky. It didn't look computerized. It didn't look, a robotic, right?
Yeah, or jittery. Yeah.
Or jittery, right? It looks smooth, and it showed that the hardware is now to the place where we can go, oh, that would be very useful in a factory or a store, or picking up my luggage, because I can't pick up luggage. That thing can pick up a lot of luggage, right? And because I have a bad back. And so if I have a 50-pound bag going to the airport, I'd rather have one of those jump out of my car and, put the luggage in the back,
Yeah, absolutely. And what was so interesting also, like Brian, when we from Future Browser again, we've made a live stream and streamed the event as well, and we looked into it, and he was like, "Oh, this is a guy in a costume," and I'm like, look at the wrists. It's a robot. So he actually mistaken the bartender because the movements were so natural in the movements, and I think this showcased just the hardware capabilities, which are already insane, which means, with training that this can be emulated.
You're right on. Now that they have the teleoperation working, they can go to town training the AI on many, many tasks and get much more data from the fingers of the human and the interaction with things like folding laundry to speed it up and make it a lot smoother. I mean, I got a look at the 1x.tech humanoid robot, and somebody spilled some coffee on the table, and then they told the robot to come over and clean it up. And while I was cleaning it up, it was like a robot, right? It was like moving like that. It wasn't real smooth or confident or like a human, right? This is going to allow the teams to train the AI to be much smoother and much more confident and much more capable than other robots. Now, I was just talking with Brett Adkins, who runs the Figure AI humanoid robot company. He was like, they didn't show any AI in this robot. My robot is walking around and doing things in the factory, all AI controlled. Well, I think Tesla did that on purpose, because I bet they have AI that could control a robot, right? I bet it would do a bunch of things, but they didn't want the comparison between the Tesla robot and the Figure and the 1X and the K scale and all the Chinese ones. They didn't want to let anybody know how advanced their AI is. But based on the teleoperation I saw, I think it's going to be very, very advanced when we see it. I wouldn't be shocked if Elon has an AI day at the end of next year or something like that, maybe 2026. That would show off the AI that they have. But it's too early. This is not going to be on sale for 3 years minimum. And it's quite possible it takes 10, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't want to get into a whole lot of details and pissing matches right now with Brett Adcock and other people, and he didn't want to tip his hands to the Chinese and say, hey, we're behind the Chinese or whatever, right? So I think it was smart of them to do that. We're going to see it someday, and I think it'll blow us away, because you put a year of training in a teleoperation system where they're training a AI system. It's going to be pretty advanced in a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and I agree, because I think training it with teleoperation makes obviously sense, because at first you have to have good hardware that can actually doing the motion of a human. Yes. That's the first step, because then you don't have as much error, kind of, because when you have a movement, then where's the hands placed? And I think that's why they need to still improve the hands, because the hands are so complex. That's, I think, the most complex part of the robot, because walking and how the hips move are not as important as the hands. So to do delicate tasks,
I think somebody said there's 20 electric motors in a hand, maybe more, right?
That's a lot. 21 degrees of freedom you need, or kind of,
I just saw a patent for the hands that are even more advanced than the hands on the robots they showed us last week, right? So there's so many innovations to come on this whole humanoid robot, and they haven't even started explaining what it's going to do, how it's, what is it for, who's going to be the first to buy them. My brother who owns 2 bars in Virginia, he wants 3 of them, and he says he'll pay $100,000 each. Well, Elon listens to that kind of customer feedback, and he might, put one out just for running bars. I mean, they had them there.
Foundation series.
Right. Yeah. Really expensive. But the cost of these motors is coming down. I just saw I have 1,000 robotics engineers in a list on X.com, and you can see the price of the motors is coming down every month. It's that's what the tech industry does. It always starts expensive, and it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper over time as Moore's law and scale helps reduce the cost of these things.
Yeah, this one was also displayed. This is the newer hand that has hydraulics more. And also, this was displayed somewhere, and somebody made a video. Like, this one is a detailed shot about how the wrist is looking, and you can see the lines there and how complex it is. And this emulates our hands better. And this could really wobble around and really has a high fidelity kind of, and that's super interesting, because we're going to see someday this in the robot, and then it can even track this better and have better AI training because of this, because then the AI learns from the humans. That's why.
Also, I mean, when we touch things, there's some give to it, right? And having hydraulics lets the fingers have some give. And for safety, if this thing ever slaps you, you want it to have some give, right? You don't want it to be a hard piece of metal, because that'll hurt you, right? So
depending on the use case, so Terminator type.
Safety is a huge problem with humanoids, because if it falls on you, it can hurt you, right?
Yeah, sure.
And if you have a child in the house, if this hurt a child, this would be a major PR problem, right? Yeah. So you don't want a humanoid in the home until it can really be 100% safe, even with dogs and children and running around chasing it, right? It needs a lot of testing before it gets into the average American home. Now, is it being used in Fremont to build cars? I wouldn't be shocked to learn tomorrow that there's already 50 of them building cars, probably with some teleoperator, right? Helping the robot do a task over and over to train the AI until the AI could take over and be trained. And so, I expect that's another reason they brought them out right now. They need to walk them around the real world. They need to use them in the Fremont factory, and people go and get tours of the factory, right? So they would see 50 of them and tell everybody, hey, there's Optimus running in the factory. Well, that would blow any of the ability to come out and sort of show this off before a leak happened or something like that. Notice the Robotaxi, there was leaks sort of the form of the car, but there wasn't a good leak of the color or of the seating or how it worked or anything like that. They kept secrets here, which is pretty hard when you're building 20 of these cars.
Especially for Tesla, the leaks are just it's just leaking. This thing's just leaking. Yeah, left and right. Yeah, so much so that Elon actually did once to find the mole. Kind of, he changed stuff in the email and individually send out emails that had a kind of a different spelling mistake or a different gap, and then they could identify who sent out the information based on the screenshots that were out, and then they could identify the person who spilled the beans.
No, they are doing a good job about keeping secrets right now, so that's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Not like the iPhone suddenly appearing in a bar.
Well, and here's another one. I talked to somebody who saw them building a 4-seater, right? That wasn't shown because that would hurt the sales of the Model Y or take away any of the specialness of a Model Y refresh, which we're all expecting sometime next year, right? And so they didn't show the 4-seater; they showed the 2-seater, which doesn't compete with any of its current products. So they're being very careful about how they introduce products now, and very deliberate and intentional, and that's good. That shows this company is growing up and is more buttoned up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think disruption is such an interesting topic. And for the end, I want to highlight this. And I think you're the perfect person to go through this. There was this famous interview.
Oh, yeah.
This is so hilarious to me, but please listen for yourself.
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Now, it may sell very well or not. We have our strategy. We've got great Windows mobile devices. Right now, we're selling millions and millions and millions of phones a year. Apple is selling 0 phones a year. In 6 months, they'll have the most expensive phone by far ever in the marketplace. And let's see, what's the expression? Let's see how the competition goes.
Well, yeah.
I worked at Microsoft back then, and I hung out with the Windows Mobile team quite a bit because I was in the mobile evangelism group, right? I evangelized tablets and phones and stuff. They made a lot of mistakes. But they're not alone. Nokia, and the day that the iPhone came out, I was still at CES. I didn't go to the iPhone launch. And I stayed back and interviewed Nokia's CEO, who gave me an answer very similar to that, and RIM's CEO, which had a really cool BlackBerry phone with a keyboard, right? And he gave me answers like that. And obviously, they didn't understand the market was going to change. Microsoft didn't understand distribution was going to change because their assumption back then was that the CTO of a company was going to decide what kind of phone you were going to buy. And they were going to buy, like at Rackspace, they had thousands of employees and they all had RIM Blackberries, right? And the CTO decided on that. Well, when Apple came out, employees went to the store and bought their own. We called that bring your own device to work, right? They brought their own device to work and said, we're not using the BlackBerry anymore, and forced the company to change. The company didn't force the worker to change. The worker forced the company to change. And so distribution was radically different after iPhone. And Steve Ballmer and all the rest of the industry just didn't understand that at that time.
Yeah, and it's interesting how this happens because in Germany also with the car manufacturers, for example, they are from the Industrial Revolution still. They are like the customer is the last entity at the end of the line that just receives the product. But no, that's not how it works. And we saw with software engineering how customer-centric they are, how user-centric they are.
Yeah.
The design is specifically for user interaction. It's about the user. And also that they invented kind of the design thinking ideation methodology, I mean, to kind of have this, because here also you cannot, like the CTO cannot decide what people will buy. It's about thinking about the customer and the use case for the customer and then go from there and reiterate under this lens, because that's how we do it. Of course, people don't know what they will use in the future, kind of. Sometimes you need to push something like Steve Jobs did with Apple. And I think this one is a big one actually, to let think of the customer. And that's why also, like, do you need vent things that you can adjust with your hand? Do you really need it? Or are we in the 21st century and we can like do some automatic stuff?
Here's why the vents are so important. My wife and I, when we had Toyotas, always argued about vents. She doesn't like air directly in her face. She likes air to go to the side, right? Or up. She doesn't like it directly on her face. It bothers her. I, on the other hand, like it in my face.
Yeah,
that's where I want all the air. I want it straight at my face, right? And I want it to be flowing fast at my face. Well, now
so the brain is cooled.
We have 2 Teslas, and when I drive her car, the car changes to me, right?
Yep.
And the vents are aimed at my face. When she drives her car, the vents are aimed away from her, right? Or wherever she set them, right? It's much better experience. And much more personalized, right? Nobody else can do it. There is no other car with electric vents like this. Waymo doesn't have it. Zoox doesn't have it, right? And so you can't have the same experience in a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW or a Chevrolet than you'll have in a Tesla. And then the market will change, right? Because people will understand, oh, the vents are digital in this new Robotaxi, and I can set them and it remembers me, and it remembers where I put my vents and where I put my seats and where I put my sound system. It plays country music instead of rock and roll, right? Or something like that, right?
And I mean, those integrations too, that's something that also is missed. And I've analyzed now Tesla for how long? 3 years, like intensively, and then 2 years with the channel and everything, like interviewing people like every week. And I got to tell you, I know that nobody has the integration of the software with the mobile phone that you can walk up to your car. It adjusts to your profile. And I mean, of course, Mercedes and BMW, they all have profiles and stuff like this. But it's not the same. It's not the same level of integration. The way the Tesla
They don't have
works.
the vents. You can't do the vents.
Yep. Yeah, that's bad. And it's so funny because the new BMW, actually, the luxury limousine, I saw a review, and I kid you not, they have a small nipple in the middle of the dashboard because they kind of also did a minimalistic design, but you have to nibble around on a very fragile small joystick to adjust the vents. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
No, that does.
It's also the executives. How much does an electric vent cost? Maybe it's $100 instead of $5, right? And bean counters at these companies argue for years about, why do we need to spend another $95 or 95 euros on this vent thing? Why nobody wants them, right? That's the answer, is that we did the customer research and nobody wants electric vents. Well, that they're going to find out why people want electric vents, because people change. I mean, Ford CEO told me nobody wants an autonomous car, which is funny because Henry Ford said you never ask your customer what they want. You show them something and then you see if they use it. And he said, well, if I had asked people before I started Ford Motor Company what they wanted, they'd tell me a better horse, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
a car. What's a car? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important also. Like disruption doesn't care about feelings, doesn't care about all these things. It's like disruption really happens fast and exponential. And I also want to show this clip for 1 second because it's also an example that I think highlights it pretty good.
And Wall Street isn't concerned that Amazon has never made a profit, not a dime. In fact, it lost $125 million last year. The company says it's investing for the future. Skeptics say it would have to sell every book being sold in the world today to justify its stock price.
I think my generation grew up with Sears.
And Amazon is worth 20% more than Sears is worth in market capitalization.
How do you view that phenomenon that Amazon today is worth more than Sears?
Investors are focused on the future. Amazon has growth potential that Sears doesn't.
A couple of geeks who sketched out some software could destroy Sears Roebuck.
That's the beauty of technology and the microprocessor. We've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
my money manager hates that I invest in Tesla, and I invested in Tesla in 2018. And he asked me, all right, Amazon in 1999 was $112. 2 years later, the entire market crashed in 2000, and a lot of companies went out of business. And Amazon stock went from $112 down to $6. And he said, are you going to sell when Tesla does the same? Well, Tesla, since I bought it, has gone down 40% or more 6 different times. and almost went bankrupt, by the way, in 2018.
Yeah.
So I almost lost all my investment in Tesla. Yeah. It put it at risk. And that was a real risk, right? That it could go bankrupt. No company had ever made a profitable startup in 100 years in the car industry, right?
Yeah. It's unprecedented so far. Yeah, and it was pretty close. And funny enough, good that Tim Cook didn't answer his emails that Elon wanted to sell actually Tesla to let it survive. But now we saw that even Apple pulled away kind of from the car project because it's too expensive. But
no. I met an Apple employee at the Tesla event, by the way, who's in the spatial computing group. And he told me, we saw the Tesla 6 months ago, and we said, there's no way we can compete with this. So the Robotaxi, I mean,
awesome.
when you
have
start
the
thinking,
answer. Yeah.
when you start thinking through a high quality product like the Robotaxi, along with a fleet of 7 million vehicles around the world, particularly here in Silicon Valley, there's
it's like
I'm on the freeway and
Tesla
sometimes
Valley,
there's 8 Teslas around me, right? And some of their plans of we could put more AI in the car than Tesla can. That doesn't matter when you have a fleet size that big.
Yeah. Because it can train way faster. It has like also the neural nets that they are building up.
Not only that, your car that's 200 yards in front of mine is seeing the road and can tell my car, hey, there's a pothole here, or there's a debris in the road, or there's a fire truck, or there's police action, or there's a protest, or there's something going on that you need to be aware of. In fact, I met some of the engineers and I was talking to them about anomalies because I just drove to Sun Valley, Idaho in my Tesla and using FSD the whole way. It went all the way across the Sierra Nevada without my hands on the steering wheel, which is really crazy, right? Curvy road, dangerous road, it's like, whoa, this is cool. But in Nevada, I was going like 85 miles an hour and a big semi-trailer truck overturned in front of me. And while it was doing that, it spit about 6 inches of dirt across all the lanes of the interstate. Well, FSD didn't know what to do and didn't really handle it well. So I took over and slowed way down and then drove through the dirt. Well, how would an AI handle an anomaly, an unexpected event like that you haven't maybe seen before, right? Mm-hmm. I've driven 50 years or 45 years and I've never seen a truck do that before. Right? So it was new for me. I had to make up, shit, what am I going to do? Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to try to go through this and hope for the best, What does an AI do? It needs the data. And they said, it's the fleet size that is going to enable Tesla to fix the anomalies at a rate that nobody else can, because nobody else has a fleet of AI-driven cars like this on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you have simulation and you try to simulate everything, there's no way you can, like the real life randomness that you have is different, I think. So you still can do a lot of stuff with simulation, and as my understanding is that they already since they kind of pre-calculate the route and also have shadow mode. Also in my car in Germany driving around, it's tracking the German streets all the time. It's learning here as well until it's just click, and then you have FSD enabled, and then But that's so interesting that they have it in digital form, kind of they see it already,
anytime you take control, it's supervised AI right now, right? So I'm watching the machine working, and if I hit something like that and I step on the brake, now I'm feeding data into the system saying, hey, there's something wrong here. Take all that video and all the data from the sensors and upload it to Tesla so they can put that into the simulator and into their training program so that they can fix those kinds of things and make a better decision later on. This goes way beyond just driving either.
Absolutely.
My ex-boss in Texas, his neighbor's house burned down, and a Tesla was in the driveway and burned down in the house fire. And Tesla came to the house to study how the Tesla might back up and get away from a fire, or make room for the first responders as the house starts to burn or something like that, so that someday we're going to see Teslas do things like that. Like, oh, there's a house on fire. Oh my God, the Tesla just drove away, right? Or drove across the street so it could get a good view of the fire, or whatever, or make room for the fire trucks, right? A neighbor's house burned down the street, and it's like, I could see a Tesla doing that someday.
Yeah, it makes absolute. I mean, this is just insane. The possibilities you have, and I also think like the also with SpaceX in the mix now, because it's also a Musk company. They have Starlink again, and I think it's so important to see the synergies that we're about to witness. Still, is that at some point the car doesn't have to be reliant on a mobile service anymore, which means it will cut down costs, because right now they have to obviously have a provider to get into the network. They pay probably a lot. Of course, the customer does that. So. But I'm not sure. Like Tesla might still have costs with that, so I think it makes so much sense to have their internet. And with the Starlink Mini, that's backpack size, I can really see that this thing could be.
Yeah,
of every Tesla,
I've seen a lot of people put the Starlink in the bed of the Cybertruck and plug it into the plugs in the back, right?
Tesla Tino did that. Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
It works pretty
he
good.
does 4K live streams while driving for 5 hours straight. He did like his longest live stream was 5 hours in the Cybertruck with I think he had a maritime Starlink thing in the back, the special version. But now they can move, like every Starlink is now capable of moving or tracking the movement kind of. But it's amazing how this develops. And this one is also very important. And I wouldn't be surprised when Tesla comes out with a phone at some point, maybe, because this is also rumored for so long.
I disagree.
Okay, you're not seeing it. Okay, yeah, okay,
no,
maybe not. I'm not sure.
Augmented reality glasses. I mean, where's my Vision Pro? And whatever, I have Vision Pro and HoloLens and stuff like that. Having a Vision Pro and an Optimus is like peanut butter and jelly. They go together. That's how they're doing the teleoperation.
Yep, exactly.
Right? So you want to control your robot, you're going to have a pair of glasses on that does augmented reality and feeds the sensors from your head movement and all that into the robot. It also would enable them to build augmented reality for the car itself. Why are you looking at even that big screen that they showed off, which is about the same size as a Model X screen or a Cybertruck screen? It's still small compared to the screen that I have in the Vision Pro. The Vision Pro, I can have a movie theater that goes across my whole room, right? Or it wraps around. Right? You can't have the same experience on a flat screen as you can with a pair of glasses. So that's the same as doing a phone. And people haven't figured that out. It's just the displays are going to be much bigger than looking at a phone. So if you want to order your cyber van or your Robovan or your Robotaxi, being able to see it, particularly when you get out of a sport. Imagine you're in Germany, you go to a big football game, right? And you get out with 70,000 people and you're all trying to find your Teslas that are picking you up. Well, the glasses could actually say here's a line to your Cybertruck, and here's here's your Robotaxi, right? And everything looks the same, but in the glasses you see yours, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I haven't thought about that, but that's true.
Apple is scheduled to bring glasses. They're bringing another Vision Pro at the end of next year, and then glasses a year or two later. So by around 2027, we're going to get new glasses from Meta. Meta's already shown off their Orion glasses.
The Ray-Ban,
Well, not the Ray-Bans. The prototypes, which have holographic lenses, which do a depth. A true hologram in front of you on top of the real world. It's much nicer than the first. Next year, you're going to see a lot of glasses come out with waveguides. Waveguides are a piece of glass with a little tiny projector at the edge that's shoving light into the glass, right? And the glass has billions of little mirrors that you can't see that reflect the image into your eyes and make a TV in front of you. Those are going to be pretty capable, but over the next decade, you're going to see innovation after innovation after innovation in that realm. And that's why I'm so excited about AI, because those glasses are going to be AI driven. You're going to be talking to them, using your eyes, using your hands to interact with computing all around you. Right. And you put that into a Tesla, a Robotaxi, or a FSD car as it's driving you around. that'll let you watch a movie with a wraparound screen or play all sorts of new augmented reality stuff, or see the cameras on the outside of the car and see through the car to the entire world around you.
Whoa, that's
so if
true.
you're driving, right, if you're driving
Exactly.
around a national park, like Yosemite National Park,
Jesus.
why are you only looking through the windows? Why aren't you seeing the entire park come around you in the glasses? That kind of thing. Or why can't you see at night and really understand what you're driving by? Because, you know, if I drove through Yosemite National Park at night, I'm missing all the cool stuff around me.
True.
Hey, Apple, turn on the daytime, right? And boom, I can see the whole daytime. Or, hey, Apple, I see a lot of stars, but I want to see all the stars. Boom.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. I think that's interesting. Also, so much so for the argument of, oh, Tesla doesn't have a head-up display like the BMWs or something like that. Maybe when you don't drive your car in the near future, in that sense, so maybe the next, like with FSD, maybe you don't need a head-up display anymore. Or with augmented reality, like you've said, maybe there you have a feed of augmented reality of the navigation, and you can see it right in front of your eyes. Why would you need it then? Obviously,
Display Week,
it would
by the
take
way,
time,
there's a bunch of manufacturers that are building screens for future cars. It puts a screen at the bottom third of your windshield. And so you're going to have a really beautiful, all the way across the windshield, augmented reality display down at the bottom of your windshield. And, you know, Mercedes and BMW and those kinds of cars will have those because they'll look cool, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that a Tesla will ever have that, but the displays are out there for people to buy coming next year.
Yeah, and also we saw that already, like transparent LED screens. So it makes sense to have it in the windshield, and maybe it just needs approval. Great that the legacy car manufacturers do something like that, because the regulations already said that Tesla can implement it if they like. But it's interesting. They're operating on a different level here, and every decision they did, like the screen in the back of the Model 3 refresh, for me, that's just input for the destination maybe, and also entertainment. But obviously with voice commands and grok integration in the future, this will not be so important anymore. You can just tell it, but if you have to correct something.
My kids, by the way, both have iPhones in the back seat, so they don't care about the screen for entertainment. They're watching their iPhones or their iPads. But the little screen is great. If you get in a Tesla with one of these screens, you can make your legroom better. It's really nice from that. That's what I would use it for.
Yeah, I always do that. And also, like, it mirrors in the front screen too, so you can adjust it from the front as well. And I think this one is actually something they need to implement, but that's just software. I think they should do profiles for the passenger seat too, if that's possible. So
I agree.
Or you can just press the button and say, okay, this is kids mode, or like easy entry, but for the other seat. Because when my kid is in the back, because she's kicking at the seat, so I have to push it a little bit further, so she has a little bit leg room. Something like that would be great, but we will see. I mean, this is possible, so I think it can be done, so it will be done at some point. Yeah, but I wanted to say for the end, just a small thinking note. And
I got another show in 9 minutes, so I got to go.
Oh, okay, I'm going to wrap it up very fast. But over here is like, to everybody who thinks like, Teleoperation and the Tesla bot, we have this already. So just so you know, I mean, technically we saw this here, okay? It's like surrogates almost. You can really have to see it in this view, kind of, because teleoperation will be a crucial thing. What we saw at the event was surrogates, a little bit, like a slight preview of a surrogate.
Even 10 years from now, let's say Optimus is done and it's in people's homes and all that. Teleoperation is very important, because let's say I go and visit you in Germany. Well, maybe my wife needs help with something, and we have an Optimus at home. I'll put on a pair of glasses and jump into the Optimus and cook dinner with her, or take the groceries out of the car with her, or take a heavy package out, or something like that.
Wow. I haven't thought about this.
Chess with her, or play games with the family, even though I'm hanging out with you, most of the time.
It is 100% like surrogates then. I mean, seriously, this is a huge deal, because you can send your link out to your Tesla, like a car link, from everywhere around the world. And it would be nice to be, your mind could be inside of the Tesla bot when you're I don't know, in the US, for example, and I still need to do something at home, I just go to my Tesla bot and teleoperate this thing.
If your pet needs something, like you forgot to feed it or you forgot to turn off a stove, you can. You know, now I assume stove, it'll know how to turn it off, but you'll have to tell it. But chasing your pet around, right? You know, and playing with your pet because your pet's lonely. Like if you're on a business trip and you have a cat or a dog and you're gone for 4 days, you can jump into your robot and chase the cat around for a while and make the cat feel like you're paying attention to it, right? And feed it and all that.
Well, Robert, this is way too fun. We need to stop immediately, I think, because it's like I could like envision stuff with you all day. I think that's so fun, and this one really, like, I have to really think about that. That's insane, and I didn't even thought about that. That's true. If you have and this is possible, kind of already, like with bandwidth. It's just a bandwidth limitation thing. Yeah. They already teleoperate this thing, and
or
maybe
security, right?
Yeah, maybe they even did an offsite test. We don't know that the teleoperators were in the different location, and then they teleoperated the Tesla bots from Texas, maybe, or whatever. We don't know.
No, there was somebody who saw a room of them, so they were there. You want low latency for that kind of demo. Yeah. You want no problems, no internet problems, right? You want to reduce every complexity down to the most simple basic things, right? So the engineering effort there was just like, wait a second, they have 20 of these things. They have a room of people remotely controlling these things, and they're not, I didn't see one fall, right? All night. And they had crowds of people around them, right? It was remarkable. I heard one did fall, but I didn't see one fall, and I was watching them all night long. So it was a pretty good engineering effort. Now we have to see, wait for the AI to get to the place where they can show off the AI inside the robot. I figure 12 months, 18 months, we're going to see a pretty good demo of that.
Can wait
maybe
for
36 months before it is really good in a factory, right? Where you see hundreds of them in a factory working, or thousands of them, all right? And then another 36 months, and they're going to start showing up in rich people's homes. And another 36 months, they're going to be in my house.
And then at one point,
so you're talking about 2030.
Peasants like me.
Somewhere in 2030, you're going to see a lot of people having something like that. And they're not alone. Figure, and there's a whole bunch of humanoid robot companies, and a whole bunch in China that are pretty advanced. So
yeah, it's like a bright future, very interesting, a new endeavor, kind of new far front. So, Robert, thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for having
me. Very fun. It's almost too much fun because we need to cut it out immediately, or you will get late to your next stop there. So, everybody, please follow Robert. He's also on X. I'm going to link his channel, obviously, in this video as well. So, Robert, thank you very much, and we will see each other again. I tell you that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's one last thing to say for the audience now, and that's goodbye, everybody.